Victory through defeat, it sounds impossible, right? Yet in one of the most powerful verses in Revelation, we find exactly that paradox. Today, we're diving deep into Revelation 12:11, exploring how the blood of the Lamb and personal testimony become weapons of spiritual triumph. You'll discover why this verse has inspired believers for centuries and how it remains relevant today.
You know, this verse is fascinating because it's actually part of a much larger cosmic battle narrative in Revelation chapter 12. We're talking about a dramatic scene where heaven itself is at war.
Wait, so this isn't just about personal victory? There's a bigger picture here?
Exactly. The verse specifically states, "They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony." The him here refers to Satan, described earlier in the chapter as a great dragon.
That's intense. So what exactly does it mean to overcome by the blood of the Lamb?
Well, according to biblical scholars, the blood of the Lamb symbolizes the sacrificial death of Jesus Christ. It's actually rooted in the Passover tradition from Exodus, where the lamb's blood provided protection and deliverance.
Mm-hmm.
But here's what's really interesting. This imagery of the lamb appears throughout Revelation, representing both sacrifice and ultimate victory. It's this beautiful paradox where apparent defeat becomes triumph.
That's fascinating. And what about this second part, the word of their testimony? What role does that play?
That's where it gets really practical. The Greek word used here for testimony is martyria, and yes, that's where we get our word martyr from.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that connection.
Yeah, and it's significant because in the early church, sharing your testimony often meant risking everything. According to historical records, many early Christians faced severe persecution for refusing to renounce their faith.
So their testimony wasn't just words, it was a demonstration of complete commitment.
Exactly. And what's remarkable is how effective these testimonies were. The search results show that in the early church, personal testimonies were one of the most powerful tools for spreading the faith.
Can you give us an example?
Well, one powerful example from the biblical record is the Samaritan woman at the well. John 4:39 tells us that many Samaritans believed because of her testimony about her encounter with Jesus.
Just one person's story had that much impact?
Absolutely. And this pattern continued throughout church history. The testimonies of martyrs like Perpetua and Felicia, documented in historical records, inspired countless others in their faith.
You mentioned persecution earlier. How does that connect to the last part of the verse about not loving their lives unto death?
That phrase really captures the radical nature of their commitment. These believers valued their testimony more than their physical lives.
That's pretty intense.
It is, but it's important to understand that this wasn't about seeking martyrdom. Rather, it was about being so convinced of the truth that they were willing to face any consequence.
So how does this apply to people today? I mean, most of us aren't facing that level of persecution.
Well, according to contemporary biblical scholars, the principle remains the same. It's about the power of combining faith in Christ's sacrifice with our personal witness.
Can you break that down a bit more?
Think of it this way. The blood of the Lamb represents what Christ has done for us, while our testimony is our response to that. Together, they become powerful tools for overcoming spiritual challenges.
That makes sense. But what makes testimony so powerful?
According to the research, personal testimony is powerful because it makes abstract theological concepts tangible and relatable. It's one thing to hear about faith, it's another to hear how it transformed someone's life.
Right, it's like the difference between reading a manual and hearing from someone who's actually done it.
Exactly. And the early church understood this. They saw testimony as both defensive and offensive. It both strengthened believers and convinced others.
That's an interesting perspective, testimony as a weapon.
Yes, and it's still relevant today. The search results show that personal testimonies continue to be one of the most effective tools for sharing faith and encouraging others.
So what makes an effective testimony?
According to contemporary studies, the most impactful testimonies are authentic, relatable, and focus on transformation. They're not about the person speaking, but about the change they've experienced.
That's helpful.
And here's something interesting. Testimonies often have the most impact when they address real struggles and challenges, not just successes.
Why do you think that is?
Because it makes the victory more relatable. When people hear how others overcame similar struggles through faith, it gives them hope for their own situations.
That reminds me, you mentioned earlier about victory through apparent defeat. Can you expand on that?
This is one of the most profound aspects of the verse. The victory described here comes through what looks like defeat, sacrifice, suffering, even death.
It's kind of counterintuitive, isn't it?
Absolutely. But that's the power of it. The blood of the Lamb, Christ's sacrificial death, became the means of the greatest victory in history.
And our testimonies follow that same pattern?
Yes, exactly. When we share how we've overcome through Christ, even our struggles become part of the victory story.
That's powerful.
And what's fascinating is how this principle has played out throughout church history. The more the enemy tried to silence testimony through persecution, the more it spread.
It's like opposition actually made it stronger.
Exactly. The historical records show that periods of intense persecution often led to the greatest growth in the early church.
So, what can we learn from this today?
Well, the research suggests three key principles. First, never underestimate the power of personal testimony. Second, remember that apparent defeats can become victories. And third, be prepared to stand firm in your faith.
Those are really practical takeaways.
And they're as relevant now as they were when Revelation was written. The methods of opposition might change, but the principles of victory remain the same.
This has been really enlightening. Any final thoughts?
Yes, I think it's important to remember that this verse isn't just about individual victory, it's about being part of a larger story of triumph over evil.
Through sacrifice and testimony.
Exactly. And when we understand that, our own testimonies become part of that continuing victory story.
You know, we started talking about victory through defeat, and it all makes so much more sense now.
It does. And that's the beauty of this verse. It reveals a pattern of victory that continues to transform lives today.
This has been fascinating. Thank you for joining us on Copilot Podcasts, where we've explored how the blood of the Lamb and the power of testimony create an unbeatable combination for spiritual victory.
And remember, your story matters. Every testimony of faith becomes part of this greater victory narrative.
That's a perfect way to end. Until next time, keep sharing your story. It might just be exactly what someone needs to hear.